And a good Wednesday morning to you. Welcome to the Nick Craig Show podcast, running live this morning on YouTube, Rumble, X, and Facebook. Don't forget that you can take the show with you 24/7 on demand by checking out the Nick Craig Show in your favorite podcast app. You can also visit and listen online by visiting the website, nickcraig.com. Our show this morning is brought to you in part by the Law Group. Visit them online at lawgroupnc.com or give them a call, 910-251-6088. Well, as we check the Schumer shutdown clock on this Wednesday morning, we have officially hit day 15 of the Democrats shutting down the federal government. I'm going to be honest with you. I am surprised that they have not folded yet. Today is a major milestone. We will see another one coming up here in a couple of weeks. And you know, folks, over the last couple of days, you've heard me talk about, giving the devil his due, commenting and giving credit to the opposite party where it's needed. And in this case, I've got to give the Democrats credit. They are standing by their ridiculously stupid policies of wanting to give $1.5 trillion worth of your and my money to illegal immigrants for free health care. And again, I have to give them credit. They're sticking by it. They're still running with it. They are not moving off the mark. And it's remarkable that they're not moving off the mark because the policy in which they are advocating for, the policy in which they have now kept the government shut down for 15 days, is so incredibly unpopular. It is so incredibly stupid to the vast majority of the American people. Don't take my word on it. Go take a look at some of the data that backs it up. Individuals that are hardworking taxpayers in the United States, regardless of whether they're immigrants or not, right? Whether you're a natural born U.S. citizen, you're here legally on some sort of work visa, you went through the very lengthy and expensive process of becoming a citizen of the United States, regardless of their background, they are not in favor of the hard work that they have done. They are not in favor of the money that they have worked hard for being given to individuals in the tune of $1.5 trillion for free and or heavily subsidized health care for individuals that did not follow the process. And this is nothing new. I mean, go back to the last and look over the last 4 years. You saw the issue of immigration be something that the Democrats really never wrapped their heads around. Even in the early days of the Biden administration, there was very little effort that went on, at least from what we saw publicly. I can't speak behind the scenes, but I would imagine it was similar, to not really tackle the issue of illegal immigration head on. And it became one of the largest black eyes on the Biden administration. You had Joe Biden himself, who, of course, was senile and decaying in the Oval Office. He appointed his wonderful vice president in Kamala Harris to be the alleged border czar, whatever the hell that means. She made, 2, maybe 3 trips to the border in her time as the border czar, provided no solutions, provided no pathway to solve said problem, offered no real ideas or anything about it. And so it is surprising that Democrats are on this mark and have been so now for the last 15 days as the government shuts down. But the overall broader issue of dealing with illegal immigration is not something that the left has yet figured out how to deal with, which is, again, truly remarkable. If you look at one of the major issues that drove voters to the ballot box last November, illegal immigration was a very large part of it. It turns out individuals who have gone through the process of coming to the United States legally, or those of us who had the honor and privilege of being born as American citizens, we are not in favor of people gaming the system. We are not in favor of people taking advantage of the United States of America to benefit themselves. America as a nation offers the most incredible opportunities. Opportunities is the key word. Anywhere on the globe. And I would argue anywhere throughout human history, America still continues to offer the most unbelievable opportunities available to man. No other nation offers what we have. Now, just because you have an opportunity doesn't guarantee you success, doesn't guarantee you prosperity, doesn't guarantee any of that. But you, in fact, have the opportunity in America. You, in fact, have the ability to come from nothing and build yourself and build your family up to not only economic success and prosperity, but just overall general success. You have the ability to do that in America if you follow the rules, if you follow the process and processes that are laid out. If you choose that you are going to give the middle finger to the process and come into the United States illegally, or make a bogus asylum claim because you don't have any interest in being in the country in which you were likely born, your home country, most people are not okay with that. Most individuals don't look at that and say, yeah, that's something I want to co-sign. That's something I'm absolutely going to get behind. And it's not that many other nations throughout the world, even some, just to our south as you head into portions of Mexico and South America, there are atrocious conditions that exist. Absolutely. Do you have compassion for individuals that live in those places? Yes, absolutely we do. It's why the United States doles out billions upon billions of dollars a year in humanitarian aid to literally almost every country across the globe. Well, we back it up. We pay for it. You and I are paying for that. But just like we talk about with crime that exists on our American streets, you have to be able to balance compassion with not only protection, but with the rule of law. You can at the same time be compassionate for individuals that are living in an area, a war-torn country, a country laced with poverty, where you've got a dictator, some sort of individual that is stifling the lower and middle class. You can have compassion for that, all while at the same time saying, we have a legal immigration process in the United States, and it needs to be followed. And before you get into the discussion of, the immigration system is broken, that's not a valid argument. The same individuals like Chuck Schumer that will talk about the so-called immigration system being broken, I will remind you once again, have been in the federal government for 40 freaking years. If the immigration system is so broken, if the tax code system is so broken, if everything is so broken, then I think it is a fair question to ask, why have you done nothing about it as you have spent your entire life operating as a government employee, operating as a leader in the United States government? Because something is broken doesn't give you the carte blanche, doesn't give you the green flag to just ignore it and not follow it. That's not how a society based on the rule of law works. There are plenty of laws that I believe are plenty stupid. I'm sure most of you have plenty of things that you believe are stupid as well. It doesn't give you the green light to break the law. It doesn't give you the green light to just ignore the law because you don't think it's right or you think it's stupid. That's not how the process works. You want to claim and talk about the immigration system? Fine. We can have a discussion about it. It does not admonish the responsibility of the individuals who have decided to blatantly ignore our immigration policies, blatantly ignore the process that has been set up in America to come to our country. And, it's so funny, before we get into a press conference from House Speaker Mike Johnson yesterday, the irony from those on the left that talk about how awful and terrible America is, don't you find it kind of ironic, yet, while they make those comments, that you've got people literally from around the globe that would do anything, including breaking the law, essentially join some sort of trafficking organization to be smuggled across the border? They will go through anything to come into the United States of America. Yet if you ask, I think, a large portion of the Democrat Party, they will tell you right now that the America that exists is the most awful, inhumane, terrible society that has ever existed in world history. Yet you've got people literally beating down the doors. You've got individuals that are risking their lives to come into our country. So once again, just kind of blowing out of the water this whole concept and this notion that America is this terrible, awful, evil place that exists. So we sit here, day 15, October the 15th. Government continues to be shut down. Democrats, as I mentioned at the open, to their credit, still holding the line on giving free and subsidized health care to individuals who are not legally in the United States of America. House Speaker Mike Johnson, as he has been doing over the last couple of weeks, did hold a press conference yesterday. You'll hear him say this is the 14th day. Obviously, this happened yesterday mid-morning. Let's listen into a few minutes of the House Speaker on the continuing government shutdown.
Welcome to day 14 of the Democrat government shutdown. It's 2 weeks of Democrats in Congress inflicting untold pain on the American people for nothing other than pure politics, as we've explained at this podium every day of the shutdown. Today, Senate Democrats will have their 8th chance to end this mess by passing our clean, nonpartisan continuing resolution, the government funding bill that would end all of this immediately. Over 3 weeks ago, the House passed that bill, and you all know the details of it. It is completely clean. There are no policy changes, no partisan riders, no gimmicks or tricks at all. All it does is keep the lights on at the current funding levels for a few extra weeks while we complete the normal appropriations process.
I'm going to stop the House Speaker right there. I mentioned this probably last week, but I feel the need to reiterate it. Whoever crafted this couple of weeks CR, which goes through November the 21st, whoever was the brainiac behind this, and I say that in a good way, that put no policy in here, gave the Democrats no leverage to demagogue the GOP and claim, oh my God, they are adding all of these wish list MAGA policy items, is an absolute freaking genius. I don't know who it was. I don't know if it was Trump himself. I don't know if it was Stephen Miller, Susie Weil, Speaker Johnson, John Thune. I don't know who. Maybe it was a brain trust. Whoever decided that they were not going to give the Democrats any leverage by just passing a clean CR is absolutely genius. Because I can promise you this, if this continuing resolution was filled with a bunch of MAGA policy, Republicans probably would have already folded. Republicans, due to the cries from the media, which you would have seen in a much larger way, cries from the media to just reopen the government and stop being partisan hacks would have been deafening to certain Republican members of Congress. They likely would have caved and voted with Democrats on what they would have proposed, which would have been a clean continuing resolution. So again, whoever's responsible for this, absolutely masterfully done. More from House Speaker Mike Johnson.
Now compare that to the Democrats' counterproposal. They're demanding $1.5 trillion in new spending paid for by American taxpayers. And I want you to be specific. I want us to be specific. I want you to know what that counterproposal includes, because we've not yet gone into all the details of it, because it's large and very absurd. But here's some of the highlights of this. It would reverse common sense reforms that Republicans made in the Working Families Tax Cut that keep illegal aliens off taxpayer-funded health care. This is a fact. Page 57, Section 2141 of their counterproposal, as we've been posting everywhere. And it would, they would add the illegal aliens, non-citizens, back to taxpayer-funded benefits. It would cost taxpayers nearly $200 billion. They would also remove a very reasonable and modest work requirement that we put on able-bodied young men with no dependents. As we've said, they should not be riding the wagon and taking Medicaid. That is intended for vulnerable populations, the elderly, disabled, and young pregnant women, for example, and not young able-bodied men without dependents who are playing video games. We put that into the law because it's common sense. Their counterproposal would reverse that. So taxpayers would be funding them again. They would make in their counterproposal permanent COVID-era Obamacare subsidies without any income caps or any other reforms at all. They would make that permanent. That would cost taxpayers an estimated $358 billion. They would take away the $50 billion that we put into the law to support rural hospitals. They would remove that. And they would send $500 million to liberal news outlets by refunding the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. It would also restore up to $5 billion of American taxpayer funds for wasteful spending for international projects. Here's a couple of examples. This is in their legislation, their counterproposal on the CR to keep the lights open. This is what they want to do. They want to spend $24.6 million of your hard-earned dollars as a taxpayer for climate resilience in Honduras. They want to spend $13.4 million for civic engagement in Zimbabwe. They want to send $3.9 million for LGBTQI plus democracy grants in the Western Balkans. They want to spend $2.9 million of your dollars for desert locust risk reduction in the Horn of Africa. And $2 million for, quote, organizing for feminist democratic principles in Africa. We are not doing that. These are unserious proposals from unserious people, and they are playing games while real Americans are being harmed adversely by the shutdown.
I'm going to pause Speaker Johnson again. I love what he just said about unserious proposals from unserious people. That is a great way to really describe what you are watching unfold in front of your very eyes. And the laundry list of issues that he just went through, this is Democrats trying to relitigate battles that they already lost, right? All of these things, the democracy funding here to research some slug that exists in sub-Saharan Africa, whatever. This is all USAID crap that the Trump administration cut out very early on into his tenure back in the Oval Office. Right? They already lost these battles. When you look at the Medicaid work requirement that was passed as part of the One Big Beautiful Bill back in early July, they've already lost that battle. The essential free funding of healthcare for folks illegally in the United States, they've already lost that battle. And I get it. Politics is a nasty sport. It is a very interesting game to follow. You win sometimes, you lose sometimes. I get that. As great as it feels right now that Republicans are in charge and running the show, folks, there will be a time, once again, it could be soon, it could be down the road, where Republicans are not in that same position. And it will suck. I get it. Nobody likes being on the losing side. Believe me. I get it better than anybody else. But when you are on the losing side, you have to be able to understand what is in front of you. You have to be able to understand the political atmosphere in which you are operating and figure out what to do from that. And it is interesting as you watch the Democrats try and rehash and relitigate things that are at this point well in the rearview mirror, right? The One Big Beautiful Bill went into law back on July the 4th. This is not an issue that needs to be discussed anymore. You can say you didn't like it, you can say this, you could say that, but it's not a current issue. And so the fact that they are dug in so far on issues that they have already lost and have no pathway to victory on is truly remarkable. From a purely political standpoint, it is a really bad idea because there is no pathway. There is no solution forward before the midterm elections. If Democrats are successful in flipping control of the House, there is no way any of these proposals are going to be taken seriously. As you just heard from Speaker Mike Johnson, these are unserious proposals by unserious people. He's absolutely spot on when he says that.
Yesterday, I read you an excerpt from President Obama's speech during the 2013 shutdown when he advocated for a clean CR to reopen the government and resume negotiations. It sounded very familiar. Democrats cheered him on back then, including Chuck Schumer. He himself said some Republicans' refusal to support a clean CR back then was, quote, the politics of idiocy. Take him at his word. So yesterday we decided to do a little count of the number of times that Chuck Schumer has supported continuing resolutions just since he became the leader of the Democrats in the Senate in 2017. That number came out to 29 out of 30 continuing resolutions. That's how many times he wholeheartedly, enthusiastically supported CRs enacted into law. That's a 97% support rate. What's changed? Well, this time his job is on the line. And we've explained this very clearly because everybody can see the obvious political motivation here behind his decision to shut the government down right now. He helped us avert a shutdown in March by doing the right thing and supporting virtually the identically same continuing CR that we're offering today. And his radical base went crazy, and they haven't forgiven him for it. That's why Chuck Schumer is opposed to it today. That's what changed. It's very obvious. This government shutdown is plainly and simply an exercise in image rehabilitation. This is an attempt at image rehabilitation for Chuck Schumer. So selfishly, completely about himself, he is shutting the government down to hurt other people. He needs to show a fight against President Trump so he can keep his left base happy through the next election cycle. How do we know that? Well, his record shows the obvious truth about it. Again, look at the numbers. Chuck Schumer supported CRs to help avert a government shutdown 29 out of 30 times as leader of his party. And he emphatically supported every single CR enacted into law since 2017, except for one. And of course, you won't have to do much research to figure out who was in the White House during that time. If you said Donald Trump, you'd be right. And it doesn't take a genius to see that's exactly the same reason why he's doing this causing these antics today. So what you'll also notice about the CRs is that they become routine. It's the routine thing to do around here. It's Washington's bad habit. And a CR was meant to be a temporary measure, is meant and designed to just keep the government open and funded for the people while Congress finishes its work on a final budget. And that's not happened in a long time. CRs have become too common. It's the status quo. It's not the way the founders intended for this process to work. The appropriations process was envisioned to be an exercise in good stewardship. They wanted the members of Congress to have open, transparent, bipartisan, line-by-line debate so that we could spend the people's money wisely. And that's precisely what Republicans are so eager to return to and what we have achieved. We are pushing that boulder uphill, as I've said, and for the first time since 2019, both chambers, House and Senate, have made real progress towards that stewardship goal. But we just need a little more time to finish it. That's the only thing the House passed CR does. It's a clean, short-term, nonpartisan continuance of funding so that that process can work out. Now, you've all heard Chuck Schumer demand that Republicans have to come to the negotiating table. Well before, this is an important answer to some of the questions that I anticipate you'll ask later because it comes up in every press conference. Why won't you negotiate? Here's the point. We were already doing that. Before the Democrats recklessly shut down the government for their own political purposes, Republicans and Democrats were already engaged in responsible, open, bipartisan processes to find answers to these problems. And what Chuck Schumer means when he says that he wants us to negotiate is that he is demanding, and he said it publicly, I can't believe he says the quiet parts out loud sometimes, but he wants a backroom deal. He wants a backroom deal that the American people will never see. He literally has said, we need the top 4 leaders to go into a room and work this out. Why does Chuck Schumer say that? Because that's how he's operated for decades. He's been in Congress since 1980. I was 9 years old in the 3rd grade when Chuck Schumer got here, okay? He is the broken status quo. We are trying to break the status quo so government works better for the people. And Chuck Schumer is resistant to that because he can't even imagine the way the founders intended for this to work. He doesn't want this open, everybody involved, all members, bottom-up process. He wants 4 people to go in a back room and just make this deal and hoist it down upon everybody else. I'm not participating in that. Chuck Schumer doesn't like that. He doesn't like that we're trying to get Washington to work again.
I want to jump in here again. I am so incredibly proud is not the right word to use, but I'm failing to draw another word to use for it. But I am so proud that the Republicans, and of course a lot of this is due to the strength of President Donald Trump, I am so glad that they have completely rejected any of this garbage and nonsense that is being spewed by the political left. If you go back to almost any other government shutdown where you had a Republican control in Congress, they were ready to cave from day one. Donald Trump has brought to the Republican Party a backbone and a spine that you have not seen from a modern Republican president in modern history. Now, you can look back and yeah, I mean, you talk about somebody like Ronald Reagan, but when you talk about Ronald Reagan being in office, that was, 45 years ago when he first won. Right? This is not, yes, it's not that far away, but it is. 45 years ago is a long time ago. And so you have not seen really since Reagan that you have Republicans that operate like this. John is in our Rumble live chat this morning doing the Lord's work, saying the word that you're looking for is encouraged. Absolutely, John. Thank you. Proud, not the right word. Encouraged is the word to use. It is so freaking encouraging to see Republicans not bowing down to the media, not running scared of CNN and MSNBC and the Democrats and trying to get in the good graces of the American media. Trump has shown Republicans that stuff, frankly, ladies and gentlemen, doesn't matter. I have made this point for years. If you've been a longtime follower of me back on the radio, I'll make it again. No matter what you do as a Republican, as a conservative, the media will never give you credit. Never. And if you think that they will, you are lying to yourself. If you think, for example, if the Republicans said today, we're going to cave and reopen, we're going to give the Democrats everything that they want, the media is never going to give Republicans credit for that. Never. They will talk about how the Democrats' plan was so good, how this is so great for our nation. You will never get credit from those on the political left. And for too long, we have watched Republicans and conservatives cave to the idea, the hope that those in the media will be nice to them, will write a nice story about them, will be nice in an interview. It has never happened, and it's not going to happen. So you need to completely remove any idea or notion or concept that you are going to get good press if you fold and cave to the Democrats. Donald Trump does that better than any other Republican that I have seen. And he is giving the strength and the courage to individuals like House Speaker Mike Johnson, like the leader of the Senate in John Thune, and all of the other Republican members of Congress, that this is just not the way it has to be. We are going to set our own messaging. We are going to set our own course. We have nothing to negotiate on. We have nothing to compromise on. It is you, the Democrat Party, the party that is not currently in power, the party that is currently the minority. You are the ones that have to fold. You are the ones that have to cave, not us. We're in power. We're in leadership. We pull the strings. You don't. And it is so unbelievably encouraging. Thanks to John in our Rumble live chat for helping me out with that. It is so encouraging to watch this unfold. More from Mike Johnson.
Because he doesn't know how to operate in that kind of system. And we're certainly not going to allow the American people to be taken hostage for his political gain. I'm going to hand it off first here to the indomitable Dr. Virginia Fox. She is the chairwoman of our House Rules Committee. We call her the Iron Lady of the House. I know she has a lot to say about Democrats' obstruction. She's going to lay out some of the indisputable facts of this government shutdown. Dr. Fox?
So before we hear from Virginia Fox, who, of course, is a Republican member of Congress here in North Carolina, we will grab a quick break and get back to some of her comments. Plus, I've got some details as the eighth time that Democrats had the opportunity to pass this continuing resolution yesterday. They failed to do so. The eighth failed vote, not able to get to the 60-vote filibuster threshold in the United States Senate due to Democrats, as Mike Johnson laid out, fighting for illegal health care for immigrants, giving money back to NPR and PBS, even though all of those stations have raised all that money themselves to keep and stay operational. A whole bunch of other wish list stupid items for funding and research on a unique butterfly somewhere in South Sudan. I mean, just all of the great Democrat wish list items, a lot of USAID crap and garbage. And so they had their opportunity once again yesterday, and they failed to act. Democrats failed to act. Plus, I'll have some details on the timeline as to how this is likely to play out and unfold in the coming days and weeks in terms of government paychecks. We'll get into all of those details as the Nick Craig Show rolls on a Wednesday morning, streaming live, 7 a.m., YouTube, Rumble, X, Facebook, and 24/7 wherever you get your podcasts. We'll get a quick word from Wilmington City Councilman Luke Waddell and have more of the Nick Craig Show coming up right after this.
I'm Luke Waddell, and I'm running for re-election to Wilmington City Council. 4 years ago, I promised strong, principled leadership. Leadership focused on public safety, infrastructure, and fiscal responsibility. I have worked every day to deliver on that promise, voting against unnecessary tax increases and wasteful spending while strongly supporting our police and fire departments. I'm ready to continue working for you. Please go to the polls and vote Luke Waddell for Wilmington City Council. Thank you.
Paid for by committee to elect Luke Waddell.
A good Wednesday morning to you. Thanks for continuing and spending some time with us here on the Nick Craig Show as we continue our coverage of day 15 of Chuck Schumer and the Democrats' shutdown in Washington, D.C. A press conference taking place yesterday as House Speaker Mike Johnson has done so pretty regularly over the last 15 days or so. And coming up to the podium now, Virginia Foxx, who is a congresswoman here in the state of North Carolina, a very influential figure in Washington, D.C. This is what she had to say about the ongoing Schumer shutdown.
Thanks for your continued work in calling attention to the facts. You remain consistent and concise in explaining to the American people that the Democrats have shut down the government. And thank you to the members of our leadership team and members of the entire conference who've been equally as vocal and engaged. I've listened to the arguments that Democrats have been making since they shut down the government, and I cannot help but shake my head in utter disgust every time. They continue to lie like a rug. They're trying desperately to change the conversation and deflect because they know they're in the wrong and they've dug themselves into a deep, deep hole. We've now entered day 14 of their government shutdown, and as the days go on, more Americans are feeling the pain. Make no mistake about it. This is real pain being inflicted upon real people. Today, 400,000 federal workers will receive partial paychecks. The Speaker called attention to this last week. This will be the last paycheck that these federal workers receive until Democrats grow a spine and reopen the federal government. Meanwhile, you have Chuck Schumer in the Senate who said in a recent interview, quote, "Every day gets better for us," end quote. His statement is as callous as it is tone deaf, and it reveals to everyone how the Democrats continue to use hardworking Americans as pawns in their own grotesque political game. I'll close with a quick observation. As the Speaker said previously, there's a real split screen here in Washington that the American people are watching. While Republicans are the ones who have voted and are continuing to vote to reopen the government, Democrats have treated their own shutdown as one big attention-getting activity. They've taken shutdown selfies, posted weird videos of themselves doing everything except working, and they even hosted a live stream that failed to gain any traction whatsoever. How embarrassing. These are not serious people. They continue to play a dangerous game with the livelihoods of Americans. And contrary to what Democrats believe, every day of this shutdown does not get any better for the American people. That's a stone cold fact. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
So there you hear the words of Congresswoman Virginia Foxx. Coming up is Steve Scalise. We'll cut away from that as that was yesterday, as you heard day 14. Day 14, that was on Tuesday. Here we are Wednesday morning, now day 15 of the government shutdown. Virginia Foxx kind of laying down the law on what's going on and talked about how the Democrats, even though this is something that they should be taking seriously, they're not. And this is yesterday's situation inside the Capitol Rotunda in Washington, D.C. last night. Democrats, well, they stormed, or at least attempted to storm, the Speaker, Mike Johnson's office. This was the scene that unfolded in Washington, D.C. These are the kinds of political folks that we are dealing with on the left. So this is the group that this is the serious group that we're dealing with. This, as is noted on this post on X, it looks a little bit like an insurrection, storming into House Speaker Mike Johnson's office. I would call that a dark day for democracy. They're chanting about swearing her in, talking about swearing in a member of Congress who, some congressman or woman left their position and a new one needs to be appointed in. I guess the part that was missed by these individuals is the House isn't currently in session. So it's going to be really hard to swear in a new member of the House when the House isn't currently working. Now, that doesn't mean that work's not going on behind the scenes. That doesn't mean discussions and conversations aren't happening, but the actual House itself is not in session. There are no votes taking place. There's no business being done. The House did their work about 3 weeks ago. Actually, at this point, a little more than 3 weeks ago. They already did their job. They passed the continuing resolution. It is now the Senate that is in session and is continuing to, Republicans are continuing to bring this proposal forward, and Democrats continue to shut it down. So things are set to get interesting here over the next couple of weeks. As was noted by Virginia Foxx, the next government pay period is now, within the next day or two, depending on the federal government agency that individuals work for. The payroll can be a couple of days before the 15th or a couple of days after. So federal workers will receive a partial paycheck. Maybe they've already received it or are set to receive it in the next couple of days. However, as we head towards the end of October, coming up here in about a week and a half, 2 weeks, that will be the date in which a full pay period is missed. And I would gather that after this partial paycheck or partial pay period that is ongoing right now is when you'll probably start to see the wheels begin to fall off. To this point, I don't remember who I was talking to, but I was joking with a friend earlier this week, or maybe it was late last week. The federal government's at that point had been shut down 10 or 11 days. And I joked, have you seen any impact? I mean, we were told that if the government shut down on October the 1st, all hell would break loose, that, everything would stop. The United States as it stands would come to a grinding halt. It's been now 15 days. It's been 2 full weeks since the government shut down. What impacts have been felt? You've got issues at some airports, minor issues. No airport is shut down permanently. There's delays, but I mean, that stuff happens when bad weather happens, computer issues that exist within all the major airlines. I mean, that is not the most unbelievable thing that has ever happened. I mean, it happens literally all the time. You get a bad rainstorm or bad thunderstorms that move through a major hub for one of the major airlines, whether it's Southwest, United, American, JetBlue, Delta, it doesn't matter. An issue goes through, some severe weather goes through one of their major hubs, and you'll see flights delayed and backlogged for a day or two. That happens pretty regularly, especially during the summer. So some issues with air traffic control at some airports is not unfortunately an uncommon thing. It tends to happen pretty regularly, just due to Mother Nature and a variety of other factors, technology, things of that nature. But for outside of that, you have seen, unless you are a government employee potentially, you have seen absolutely zero impact of this so-called disastrous government shutdown. The mail still comes. I got a bunch of packages from the Postal Service this week. For individuals that are on Social Security, those checks are continuing to flow. For individuals that are on Medicare or Medicaid, that coverage does continue. Everything is still operating. Everything is still running forward, and it's kind of interesting to call it a government shutdown. It's kind of interesting when if I was to tell you this show is shutting down, if I made that comment, you would think, okay, the show is stopping. There will be no longer a Nick Craig show if I'm shutting the show down, right? Yet when the federal government shuts down for 15 days, you see literally zero impact. It's almost like, why even call it a government shutdown? Everything is still operating. Now, over the next week or two, that will probably change. As federal workers receive this partial paycheck and get close to their next pay period starting as early as October the 24th, that is when you will probably start seeing federal employees stop showing up to work. That is when you will probably see bigger issues with things like TSA, air traffic controllers, things that folks actually interact with. Regardless of that, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, that stuff, the Postal Service, all of those things will continue in perpetuity as long as the government has any money, which they, of course, have plenty of. So that stuff will continue. And so it's definitely interesting. It's an interesting process to watch unfold, and it's an interesting, it's like one of those things where the words don't really match what you're experiencing and what you're seeing. Again, if I told you that I was shutting down, if your favorite restaurant says they are shutting down, yet they're open at 90% capacity, you really wouldn't say they were shutting down, right? You wouldn't use that terminology. You wouldn't use that phrase, but that's exactly what's happening. So I got some of this data from this group. I don't know anything about them. The Bipartisan Policy Center. I will admit, anything that's got the word bipartisan in it tends to cause me some immediate alarm, but they're talking about how normal paychecks, or at least partial paychecks, going out now and have gone out to federal employees. But they write, civilian employees will experience their first fully missed paychecks on October the 24th, 28th, or 30th, depending on the agency and payroll processing system. If the shutdown lasts through the end of October, which seems like there's a strong possibility, nearly 1.8 million paychecks will be withheld from civilian employees of federal agencies. A portion of that figure represents the lost wages equivalent of paychecks partially withheld during the first pay period impacted by the shutdown, which is the one that we are in the midst of right now. So military personnel, this is an interesting one. The president, you saw some of his comments over the weekend on Truth Social that as long as there is money, and of course there is within the Department of War, that individuals that are either active duty military personnel, reserves within the National Guard, they are set to be paid and will continue to be paid as long as there is some money to take place within that. So that is going to happen. The president's pushing for it. So with that information, as we round out the show this Wednesday morning, I want to look at what the off-ramps are here for the Democrats. As you heard from House Speaker Mike Johnson, unless something dramatic happens or there's some dramatic change in policy, which I don't think will be the case, he says there's nothing to negotiate. There is nothing to negotiate with those on the left. This is a clean continuing resolution. There's no policy. There's no bloat. There's no MAGA wish list items. None of that stuff exists in it. So there's really nothing for Republicans to negotiate at all. So then, of course, you have to look at the Democrats. What is their off-ramp? And at this point, I don't often like doing a show or coming on the air without having a fully formed opinion on something or kind of having a way to talk about it. But ladies and gentlemen, I will at this point say to you, I genuinely don't know. They have put so much stock and so much effort into funding $1.5 trillion worth of illegal healthcare for illegal immigrants, money into reopening the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and giving more of your taxpayer dollars to NPR and PBS, all of these other USAID wish list programs, getting rid of the very basic and simple Medicaid work requirements that say if you're an able-bodied individual, you have to be working some level of work to qualify for government-assisted health care, which makes a whole hell of a lot of sense. I mean, there's no reason that if you're a able-bodied 26-year-old, you should be leeching on to government-subsidized free health care from the government without any sort of work requirements. It's absurd. It's stupid. It's ridiculous. But they put so much effort into this. They have really, to their credit, stood on this issue, even as unpopular as they are. They've continued to stand on these issues. I don't know how they begin to walk it back. I would suspect that if you start seeing major airports closing due to there not being any TSA employees, I would suspect if you see travel, start having major issues in backlogs due to a lack of TSA or air traffic controllers, that might force them. But outside of that happening, I just don't see the Democrats moving off of this. You and I and the vast majority of the American public knows that this stuff is incredibly unpopular, knows that these ideas and policies don't make a lick of sense at all, yet they're hell-bent on them. They are continually digging their heels into the sand and saying, we're not going to move. There is no circumstance that I see right now, and I could be wrong, but I don't see a circumstance right now where the Democrats get anything that they want. None. They're not going to, I don't see Republicans, and Trump is one thing. Other individuals like, and I'm probably the most susceptible to it is John Thune. But I don't see the Republicans moving off the mark on this. There's no reason for them to do so. And so that leaves very few options for those on the left. And Mike Johnson also noted, and this is something that I've talked about regularly now, you've heard me say it, this is the manifestation of the ongoing civil war within the Democrat Party. Chuck Schumer is in a horrific position. If you look at his track record with Johnson clearly laid out, 29 out of 30 continuing resolutions he has been fully supportive of. He can't support this current continuing resolution, not because he doesn't want to, but because there will be so much blowback and so much pushback from the radical left within the Democrat Party. The Trump derangement syndrome runs so heavy within the political left that there is not a circumstance where somebody like Chuck Schumer can back the Republican CR without catching an incredible amount of flack and having to deal with some significant political pressures. That is a very tough spot for him. I don't have any sympathy for him. It's a making of his own issue here. Democrats over the last decade have failed to push back on the radical left wing of the party, and it has come home to roost. It has come home to be a major issue for them to deal with, and now they're facing it, front on. They're facing it right in front of their very eyes. It is happening and unfolding right in front of them. They have been unsuccessful in dealing with this group. They have been unsuccessful with pushing back against these stupid radical things that are being proposed by those on the left. Those individuals are gaining some power. Those individuals have a large active contingent of people that are super active on social media and the activist types that exist behind them. And so it puts Democrats like Chuck Schumer in a miserable, miserable position. But again, if Democrats had just done a better job calling this nonsense, calling this garbage out years ago, they wouldn't be in this spot. So it is now officially day 15. As you probably can imagine, Johnson as well as Democrats will likely be holding a press conference today. The narrative on the Democrats is probably going to shift now to federal employees aren't getting paid. I don't think that they're going to gain a whole lot of levity with that. Again, it's their shutdown. They are the ones that hold the key to reopening the federal government. 5 Democrats crossing the aisle in the Senate reopens the government literally immediately. So I don't think there's a lot for them to really gain there, but they're going to try. And they're going to then turn it into, individuals, they can't feed their families anymore. And it's the Republicans' fault. And I hope that the spine and the backbone and the encouragement that Donald Trump has given people like Mike Johnson and John Thune does remain, as the political pressure will get ratcheted up, and in the next couple of days, you will see on cable news a poor government employee that can't feed their kids, even though they got paid, freaking 4 days ago, at least a partial paycheck, and that will turn into a big sob story that the media and Democrats will use to try and force Republicans on the issue. So that is what we are tracking right now. No end in sight, at least from all of the information that we've got available. I'll keep an eye on all of this throughout the day and over the next couple of days, and we'll bring it to you, the latest to you right here on the Nick Craig Show. We've got a couple of things that I'm keeping an eye on. A new accuracy in media report exposing the city of Raleigh and DEI policies. We'll dig into some of those details coming up, as well as early voting kicks off throughout the state of North Carolina tomorrow morning. I'll have all the information you need on those early voting locations and everything you need to know about the early voting period here in southeastern North Carolina coming up tomorrow, as well as we begin the process of a municipal election early voting and walk through the portions of early November, where once again Republicans have a huge election coming up to hold on to any sort of power within the Wilmington City Council. We'll dive into all those details coming up right here on the Nick Craig Show. I do want to thank the Law Group here in Wilmington for their continued support. You can visit them online at lawgroupnc.com or give them a call at 910-251-6088. Don't forget that you can support the Nick Craig Show financially over at patreon.com/Nick Craig. $5 at $10 a month helps keep the program on the air. The Nick Craig Show airs weekday mornings, 7 a.m., YouTube, Rumble, X, Facebook, and is available 24/7 wherever you get your podcasts. We're back here tomorrow morning right here on the Nick Craig Show.